Ready not? Here the story comes.
Exactly. Okay. Good Tavach, everybody.
Good Tavach.
Thank you, Hanan. So.
I'm everyone, not Hanan.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. So, this story is about, it's about Pesach, sort of, I guess, yeah, it's about Pesach. And it's about Reb Leib Sarahs. Leib Sarahs was a very big tzaddik, and Reb Israel from Polotsk, so he was a Talmud of the Maggid, and he decided he was going to go accompany Reb Leib Sarahs wherever he went. So one time they went to Vilna, not too far away from the city of Vilna. They went to a certain inn, and the person who owned the inn was a rich Yid, and they stayed there. Now in the morning after that night, Reb Leib sent Reb Israel to call the balabais, to call the owner, this rich Yid. So he calls him and he says, you should go to the street of the Goyim. I guess it was a certain street that they're talking about, a certain street that was, obviously there are many, meaning it wasn't the Jewish quarter, it was a non-Jewish quarter, a certain street, and ask a certain prince who's there to come and speak to him. So the balabais, this owner of the inn, says, he says, what are you talking about? How am I can't, going to that quarter as a Jew is dangerous on its own. There's no guarantee I'm going to even survive. And you want me to go tell this prince who never ever spoke to a Jew before in his life to come? I'm forfeiting my life. So Reb Leib Sarahs, is very interesting how he says this. He says, do you know who I am? I'm Reb Leib Sarahs. I'm Leib, the son of Sarah. That was what he went by. So, and if you don't listen to me, you're gonna regret it. And what happened? He didn't go right away. And pretty much right afterwards, his two children and his wife became very sick.
With the inn owner?
Huh? The inn owner's children and his wife became very sick. So this guy comes running back to Reb Leib Sarahs and he says, "I'll do whatever you ask me. Please, I don't want my family to be sick anymore. I want them to be healed." So Reb Leib Sarahs, go and do what I say, and you'll see when you come back, they'll be fully healed. So this guy goes and he's very scared. He goes to this street where a Jew shouldn't even go, and nothing happens to him. He goes to the door of where the entrance of where this prince's living place is, and he knocks on the door. The servant answers, and he says, I need to speak to the prince. So he goes and tells the servants inside that he needs to speak to, that there's a Jew who wants to speak to the prince. And meanwhile, when the prince comes back, they tell the prince there's a Jew who wants to see him. So he says, bring him in. And the Jew comes, he says, listen, there's this tzaddik, Reb Leib Sarahs, and he asked me to come and tell you to go speak to him. And right away, this prince says, I'm coming, let me get in my coat. He was he felt like it was very urgent to come. And he goes and he runs, not even knowing why he's in such a rush, and goes straight to Reb Leib Sarahs, and they speak for a very short amount of time, and he goes back. When the prince reaches his home, he asks himself, why did I run to speak to this rabbi? Why did I run to him? Like what came over me? And he felt like this rabbi had some kind of hold over him, and so he sent his servants to go get him and to, he was bothered by it. But by then Reb Leib Sarahs had already left. Reb Leib Sarahs had already left by then. Anyway, that was the end of that. Now, a few days before Pesach, thank you, Mandy. A few days before Pesach, this rich man, one of his servants went missing, and they couldn't find where he was. And the priests in that area created a blood libel saying, "Oh, why is he missing? Because you killed him, and you're using his blood for the matzahs." Like many a blood libel goes.
Great story.
Right.
That's a great story.
So, Thank you.
The reviews.
Okay, so
The video footage, the camera movements.
and they basically took this Yid, they put him in jail, and they started to torture him so that he should admit to this thing he didn't even commit. And they tortured him so much that he came to the point where he would rather die than live, and so he admitted to everything, even though he didn't do it. And so they said, and they wanted him to sign, and everything. Now they needed this prince who was in charge of this area to sign on his death warrant, on his death sentence. So they bring him the document, and right away, what does this prince say? He says, "Okay, listen, I'll sign on it, but first, I want to take this Yid with me to the market. I'm going to go there for a few days. Because why? Because this Yid is an expert in horses, and I want to buy myself some horses. So I'm going to take him with me first. He'll choose out horses for me, and then if he comes back and he's still guilty, then I'll sign the document, no problem." So they go, and the whole time this Yid is being guarded to make sure that he can't run away, and he starts to buy horses. As he's and one of the days as he's there, he sees his servant walking around. His servant who's been missing. So he runs over to him, and the servant sees him, and his servant runs to him, and he's all happy. And he says, "Master, I was looking for you." He says, "What do you mean you were looking for me? You ran away from me. Why'd you run away?" So he said, "The truth is, I didn't want to go." And this one priest, one local priest came over to me, and he promised me that if I went somewhere far away, they would give me a home and a field and property. But I didn't want, so I refused. One night, all of a sudden, I was woken up. They put me in a wagon. They threw me, and they took me far away, and they just left me somewhere. And I've been trying to get back to you. I had no money, and I was lost. I wasn't even gonna be at this market. But what happened was some old guy with a long beard put me in a wagon and said, "Go." And we just started going, and we came to the market, and he said, "Look for your master here. You'll find him." Right away, this rich Yid understood that this was Reb Leib Sarahs. So he quickly and the servant said, "Please take me back with you, so I don't starve." Meaning this servant, all he knew was that his master, and that his master would give him, everything he needed. So he never wanted to leave. Anyway, so Reb Leib Sarahs takes him to the nearest inn. Quick correction: it was actually the rich man, not Reb Leib Sarahs. I made a mistake, and I said Reb Leib Sarahs took him to the nearest inn, but it was this rich man, the servant's master, who took him to the nearest inn. Gives him food and says, "Stay here. Wait for me here. Don't move, and we'll go back home soon." Anyway, so he finishes buying the horses for the prince, and they, take the horses and they attach them to the wagon or whatever it is. They basically need to go with all these horses back. And the horse, right as they start traveling, the horses start jumping around, and they feel like the wagon's about to turn over. And the prince, he feared for his life. So the Yid said he saw his opportunity to get his servant. He says, "I know a very skilled wagon driver. I'll bring him. He has to come along anyway." So he goes, gets a servant, comes back, and he sits by the horses, and he starts riding, and everything's fine. Right? The horses aren't jumping anymore, everything's fine. They start going. And as they're going, the prince tells the rich Yid, he says, "You should know that the time that I spent with this, old rabbi that came, he told me that when they bring a document to sign your death, that I should first take you to the market to buy some horses. That should be the excuse that I give." And when they brought me this document, I realized that this person was no joke, and so I did as he asked. But the thing is, I don't see how you were saved. We're going back, and you're still going to have to die. Nothing came of it. So the Yid told him, "When we go back in front of the judges and the witnesses who knew my servant, you'll see that everything will be taken care of." This servant driving the wagon is my missing servant. So right away, the prince says, "Wow, now I know that there's Taka God in Israel." Let's see, that's what it says in the story over here. And I have one question for you though. Why did you admit why did you admit to doing these crimes if you never did them? So he said, because they were torturing me so badly that I wanted my life to end. It was worse than death. And he said, this should be a sign to you for all the times that they ever got such admissions out of Jews. You see how much they're worth. Meaning you torture them so much, of course they're going to say they did it. Anyway, so they go back, and right away the prince himself goes to, he's there by the trial, and the witnesses, they're the ones to testify. They say, yeah, this is a servant, and the servant gives the whole account of what happened, and he points to the priest who tried to bribe him and who was there, and he says, this is what he did, and he couldn't deny it. And so that's how this Yid was saved from the blood libel. So that's the story of Reb Leib Sarahs, who prevented a blood libel. May we all see miracles in our own lives. And Kasher Freich and Pesach and Mitzvah. Thank you, everybody. Oh, Mandy, what do you have to say this week? What do you have to say?
It never happens to me. I would like to thank all the people for participating in this week's Mav Malka. Levi, thanks for bringing the extra pie. It's worth noting that during these times when the people would torture Yidden for a confession, they would not stop torturing after you admitted. The idea was not to get what they wanted. The idea was just to torture Yidden. During the Inquisition, after you were Maiden, after you Shmadzich, they still tortured you and killed you. So, for all those people out there who ever find themselves in a place where you're forced to either give up your God or be killed, remember, you're going to do it in vain because your God cannot be given up. Also worth noting to anybody who's listening to the rest of this, it's a true story. Also worth noting to anybody who's listening to the rest of this is interrogation techniques have changed. They no longer torture people simply because they're not going to tell you anything other than whatever it takes to get the torture to stop. So the intel is not actionable anymore. So, nothing to do with court. So, stop torturing Yidden, and that's it. And the Academy, and my fans, and of course my mother, and the reason for me being here.
I
wonder if he also cares.
That's a true story. They don't beat people anymore.
Okay.
It's not.
Good luck, everybody. Thank you very much for joining.
They don't do it anymore because
Thank you for staying till the end. Good luck. Love you guys.